female voice with a sophisticated playing in the background. So this is a painting of Billie Holiday that I did some time back. And I thought it would make for a nice background to this video I'm gonna do. And let me turn that off. So the book is, who would have thought, Jean-Paul Sartre, Nausea. Don't know if I got the name right, but yeah, he's pretty popular philosopher and writer, so the name Sartre itself should ring a bell. So this is a very trippy book. I remember my first time reading it, I was like, what? It's like those kind of mind, it just racks up your mind really, but in a very interesting way, in a very psychological and philosophical way. And I think I really enjoyed it. It was my first Sartre book, and probably the only Sartre book I've read. I haven't read his philosophy proper, but I loved this as a work of art where he could also express his philosophical ideas. So it's about a young man who, I think he fell into some fortune, maybe an inheritance. Like, he really doesn't need to work, but he's really he doesn't really know what to do with himself. So there's this existentialism in it, like existentialism as a branch of philosophy which Jean-Paul Sartre is most known for. So in the whole book just follows him with his activities all over the place, which clearly doesn't give him any satisfaction, any fulfillment. But at the end of the book, he sort of comes to a resolve to decide on what he wants to do with his life. He finally figures out a way to find some meaning. And this epiphany, is accelerated by his encounter with probably a jazz album, just like the one I was playing here. Probably there's some sort of record, it was a vinyl record which he has Madeleine put on for him. That's the assistant in the hotel he's staying. So it's it becomes sort of his thing that whenever he's there, he likes to listen to that record being played, and in his imagination he creates a picture of the woman singing and in the record, mental images of what it look like. And that happens a lot when you listen to that kind of jazz. You imagine this really dim lit room full of smoke and the prima donna on stage in a silver shiny dress with the spotlights on them and silver jewelry and a silky voice and a background of players disappearing into the darkness of the stage, seasoned players of piano and trumpet and everything, some old black men who've been doing it for ages, and it's sort of a New York scene at the time when this book is written. And I don't know, when I read it and read it again, I've always thought it must have been Billie Holiday. The time tracks, I don't know, but in my head it's always Billie Holiday singing, because she has that sort of voice that is enough to send somebody to an epiphany, realization of what they want to do with their life. And so he imagines that the song is written by some Jewish music impresario who is in Brooklyn, and he sort of draws the image and tries to show you the man at work, and then it goes back to the vinyl and playing, and then he draws the image of the woman singing again. I thought that was pretty brilliant, how his imagination works in creating this mental world and making him, get some meaning from it all. So he says, these are the very last pages of the book. That when he listens to the song, I think of a clean-shaven American with thick black eyebrows who is suffocating with the heat on the 20th floor of a New York skyscraper. Over New York, the sky is burning. The blue of the sky has caught fire. Huge yellow flames are licking the roofs. The Brooklyn children are going to stand in the bathing tracks under the jets of hosepipes. The dark room on the 20th floor is baking hot. An American with the black eyebrows, eyes, pants, the sweat rolls down his cheeks. He is sitting in shirt sleeves on his piano. He has a taste of smoke in his mouth and vaguely a ghost of a tune in his head. Some of these days, Tom will come along in an hour with his hip flask. Then the two of them will flop into leather armchairs and drink great draughts of spirits, and the fire in the sky will come and burn their throats. They will feel the weight of an immense sordid slumber. But first of all, that tune must be noted down. Some of these days, the moist hand picks up the pencil on the piano. Some of these days, you're gonna miss me, honey. It happened like that. That or some other way, it doesn't matter. That's how it was born. It was the one body of the Jew with coal black eyebrows, which it chose to give it birth. He held his pencil limply, and drops of sweat fell in his ringing fingers on the paper. And why not me? Why had it to be that fat lout full of stale beer and spirits who was chosen so that the miracle could be performed? Yeah, he envies this guy and wishes that he had written something that beautiful. Madeleine, would you put the record on again, just once before I leave? Madeleine starts laughing. She turns the handle and it begins again. But I'm no longer thinking about myself. I'm thinking about the fellow out there who composed this tune. One day in July, in the black heat of his room, I try to think about him through the melody, through the white acid sound of the saxophone. He made that. He had troubles. Everything wasn't working out for him as it should have. Bills to pay. And then there must have been a woman somewhere who wasn't thinking about him the way he would have liked her to. And then there was this terrible heat wave which was turning men into pools of melting fat. There's nothing very pretty or very glorious about all that. But when I hear the song and I think that it was that fellow who made it, I find his suffering and his sweat moving. He was lucky. He can't have realized that, of course. He must have thought with a little luck this thing ought to bring him $50. Well, this is the first time for years that a man has struck me as moving. I should like to know something about that fellow. I should be interested to find out what sort of troubles he had, whether he had a woman or whether he lived alone. Not at all about humanism, far from it, but because he made that. I have no desire to know him, besides he may be dead. Just to get a little information about him and to be able to think about him now and then when listening to this record. I don't suppose it would make the slightest difference to the fellow if you were told that in the 7th largest town in France, in the vicinity of the station, somebody is thinking about him. But I would be happy if I were in his place. I envy him. I have to go. I get up, but hesitate for a moment. I should like to hear the negress sing again for the last time. She sings. Now he's introducing now our Billie Holiday. And, this image comes to mind when I was reading that. She sings. That makes two people who are saved. The Jew and the negress saved. Perhaps they thought they were lost right until the very end, drowned in existence. Yes, yet nobody could think about me as I think about them, with gentle feeling. Nobody, not even Annie. For me, they're a little like dead people, a little like heroes of novels. They have cleansed themselves of the sin of existing. Not completely, of course, but as much as any man can. This idea suddenly bowls me over because I didn't even hope for that anymore. I feel something timidly brushing against me, and I dare not move because I'm afraid it might go away. Something I didn't know anymore, a sort of joy. The negress sings. So you can justify your existence? Just a little? I feel extraordinarily intimidated. It isn't that I have much hope, but I'm like a man who's completely frozen after a journey through the snow and who suddenly comes into a warm room. I imagine he would remain motionless near the door, still feeling the cold, and that slow shiver would run over the whole of his body. Some of these days you'll miss me, honey. Couldn't I try? Naturally, it wouldn't be a question of tune, but couldn't it be another medium? It will have to be a book. I don't know how to do anything else. But not a history book. History talks about what has existed. An existent can never justify the existence of another existence. So you see there at the end, he decides to choose his medium. He'll write a book like he says that could he like do something like that, you know, and to justify his existence, say that he existed, he lived. And so it's sort of like, I wouldn't call it vain hope, but for posterity, even the humblest of artists, imagine them being loved and appreciated in prosperity and somebody thinking of them kindly and with gentleness after they are gone, by the effect of their artwork. I mean, it's in every artist's dream. It might not be in a grand scale, but just to be read even by a few people now and again. And I figured Billie Holiday didn't imagine that, you know, all these years after, people would still love him and love her and listen to her. But, you know, she still sort of is remembered and lives on in our hearts. And that is what the character of Sartre in Nausea sort of envies. And even if, you know, I found like it wasn't like, you know, it was sort of an asshole, you know, during the whole book. And in that part of the end of the book, he sort of comes into his own. You can see his develop and, you know, decide to do something meaningful with his life, you know. So he imagines that, you know, the writer of this blues song, you know, what they must have gone through. And of course, the singer, in this case, Billie Holiday, you know, she had a terrible, terrible life. You know, got into prostitution at the age of 14, where she started singing and was saved from that sort of life through her talent. But having had such a difficult childhood that she did, it kind of stuck with her, and she lived a very troubled life way till the end, when she got really addicted to drugs. But when you hear her sing, man, you wouldn't tell, you know. It's just like so soft, and it just carries you along to this beautiful, you know, world of existence with music and harmony. And, you know, not till I did my research on her did I find that she lived such a difficult life. Yet she maintained such beauty and grace and poise in doing her art, and we still remember and appreciate her that way. So I really loved how Jean-Paul Sartre sort of illustrates and imagines what goes on behind a song. And I think many of us have done that sometimes. A song that really, you know, spoke to you, you start imagining how it came to be, you know. And that's what we try to do, I guess, as artists, you know, just try to find some meaning, and because, you know, in this absurdity called life. And yeah, that was the end of Nausea. And I hope I haven't spoiled it for anyone. Being a book like this is hard to spoil. And I'll see you next time. Thank you. Like and subscribe. And let's see you guys out with a tune once more as we go out with Billie Holiday's voice.